Erin, welcome to Firm and Final. How you doing today?
I'm good, Mabe. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us for this episode.
Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so let me take you back. Probably about a year ago, you and I met over email, and you had asked me to join you at Saya to have a fireside chat for the Saya Future Leaders Program. And you're very involved in Saya Future Leaders. You're very involved in Saya. Tell me why that's important to you.
Yeah, it's important to me for a couple different reasons, part personal, part professional. I think professionally, it's an opportunity for me to, maybe personally too, to demonstrate my leadership skills
Mm.
in a different environment that's outside of the 9 to 5, right?
Yeah,
Like within our organizations, we can have leadership roles, but also I think it's important to give back to the community,
yeah.
invest time and energy and resources into, frankly, my peers and those that might be younger that are looking to come up. And it's an opportunity for me to learn and flex some of these leadership muscles. So it's been fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, I think it's a great initiative that Saya rolled out. They probably rolled it out like roughly 5 years ago, and I had already aged out of what's considered a future leader. I found that, oh man, made me feel like an old person in the industry.
I tell you what, I'm inching closer to that 40 mark, and we've toyed around with the idea of adjusting to alter the definition of what is a future leader in terms
Sure.
of the age. We've toyed around with 45, but as it stands today, hard line 40.
Okay. Understood.
So
Understood.
I'm going to be coming over to your world soon.
All right. All right. Come on over. Water's warm. So Erin, tell us so that everybody knows, where do you work today and how did you get to your current company and your current role?
So I work at an organization called Imagine 360, and I'm responsible for business development, sales in the Midwest and Miami. I know it's random, but go with it.
Yeah.
Uh, and I've been here for 5.5 years, so maybe I'll take you backwards. So I've been here for 5.5 years. I found this role, or this role found me via LinkedIn.
Okay.
And it was a cold outreach from an organization that expressed interest. And I was pleased with where I was in my career and frankly not looking, but we know how that goes, right? You're usually
Yeah.
not looking for a role when something comes up. And so I took the call and here I am. And when I took that call, I was at an organization um, called Gravy, which is
Mm.
also in the self-funded, actually more level funded space, individual market. Was there for about 3 years, an amazing team over there. And they also found me on LinkedIn, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Usually don't think that that really happens or it works, right? But it did twice now. And before that, I was at Gallagher brokerage firm in Itasca, Illinois for about 8 years in a business development role focused in the public sector and
Okay.
started my career there after 2 summer internships where I was recruited on campus in my undergraduate university. So 15 years plus in this crazy insurance world. But I think as I've gotten older or more mature or seasoned,
Yeah.
I've wanted to do
I like the word seasoned.
seasoned. Okay, let's go
Yes.
seasoned. I've wanted to do more in terms of innovation,
Mm.
exploration, working with larger, more complicated self-funded clients.
Okay. So you said you worked at Gallagher, you had a summer internship there, two of them.
Yeah,
So did you study something in college that set you up for the insurance industry?
I did not. So this is kind of a wild story. I was on campus for the career fair and I had my list made like, here are the 5 companies that I wanted to go to, and I knew I wanted to go in sales.
Yeah.
Both my grandfathers owned their own businesses. My father worked for his father. I thought not having a strong conviction about exactly what I wanted to do, I thought I would probably be suited for sales.
Okay.
Industry-wise, I went with who are the companies that I know on this list, right?
Yeah.
PepsiCo, Caterpillar, the ones that jumped out. Nowhere in the world was insurance on that list, I
Yeah.
tell you. And so, as luck would have it, I'm outside at the career fair, probably one of the hottest days of the year, wearing an all black suit. And I remember it like it was yesterday. My heels are sinking into the grass. And
Yeah.
I end up talking to 2 of the leaders from Gallagher for over an hour outside. I think they just, I was curious looking at probably a banner as I walked by and then just started the dialogue and conversation. And that's where insurance took off for me.
Yeah. Why is that such a common story? Like, we don't hear a lot of people who are studying in college to then pursue a career in the insurance industry. Now, I'll take myself out of it because I think a lot of actuaries who are in school, they know they're going to go down the insurance path, but most other people I come across are not necessarily studying an insurance type of career path while they're in college or university.
It's a good question. I mean, I think now there are more majors in insurance. I would still say they're focused on the property liability side, less
Yeah.
so than the benefit side. So that's part of it is I don't think that there's much of an opportunity even to study it in school. The other part I think is now being in this space for 15 years, you don't realize how nuanced it is
Mm,
until you're in it. And so it's a bit complicated. And SIA is an organization that has helped make sense of a lot of it in
sure.
terms of all the different players, whether it's captive, you know, stop traditional stop loss carrier, PBM,
Yeah.
TPA, RBP, the whole alphabet soup of acronyms.
Yeah.
But I think it's just hard to it's not very sexy, let's start there, right? Like, people
Yeah.
don't know about it unless you have a family member that's in it, or a friend that's in it, or you just have this desire to get into insurance. You're
Sure.
probably not finding it on your local college campus. So I think from our perspective as an industry, we have an opportunity to do a better job, each of our respective companies, to be on site, to get the word out, to
Yeah.
recruit talent. Um, because that's the other piece of this is there aren't a lot of folks that, you know, look like you and I, Mabe, that are in the space. And so
That's
I
right.
think it's on us too to change that. What do you think about it? Why do you think there's not a mad dash to get into insurance?
I think you nailed it. It's not a sexy, it's not thought of as a sexy career path. It doesn't have the same cachet to it if you're, for example, in financial services, it doesn't have the same cachet as investment banking
Mm,
or private equity, right? If you're in some other technical fields, it doesn't have the same cachet as computer science or data science. And so I think insurance is such a broad umbrella. You and I play in the accident and health space. And even within that, we're in a very sliver niche of self funding, stop loss, and reinsurance. And so I think putting a spotlight on this particular career path inside this gigantic industry, nobody's really doing that, right? Maybe some of the larger companies have more of a presence on campus and things like that. But I think outside of coming to the industry conferences, you just don't see a lot of spotlight on this industry.
you don't. And it's so hard to know unless you're in it what opportunities exist
Yeah,
and that there is there's a path for just about everybody. There's
That's
a
right.
path for those that want to be in leadership. There's a path that for those that want to be in production only. There's a path for account management. And then there's a path for the super smart people like you that are dealing with all the numbers,
Right.
right? But it's hard. I don't know how we get better about it outside of you and I going to campuses together,
Right.
or having being a part of maybe a program at a local university where we're teaching a class on what this career entails.
Yeah, I think we're trying a path here where we're going to some junior colleges
Okay.
and trying to find people who are a little bit confused about what they want to do for a living and giving them exposure to the insurance industry by putting them through like a rotational program that has them touching different parts of the business. It might be underwriting, it might be claims, it might be account management, and after, a solid rotation of some of those different operational areas, you'll have a good understanding of, do I want to do this or not? Right. And if you decide you do, then you're exposed to some people who've been in it for some time, and you can start deciding what your career path within this niche is. I'm with you. It's a hard path. But you did say something there. You said there's a lot of different paths for a lot of different people, and you can go down those paths, and in this space you can have a lot of fun, right?
Mhm.
And I think this is could be a very fun industry. I think you would agree with me on that.
I
But
would.
every day is not roses and sunshine, right? So tell me about something about this industry that maybe you don't like so much.
Oh gosh. How much time do we have? No, I'm just kidding. I think well, I mean, I think part of it is there is a lack of diversity within
Hmm.
the industry, and I think that that can be a challenge because there's a lack of thought diversity sometimes. So that's one thing that I think as an industry we need to work on and change. Um, I would say on the benefit side of things, and this is more maybe uh, regional specific, is that people's mindsets are fairly closed and they don't always have a growth mindset.
Okay.
It's more of a scarcity mindset. So, in the Midwest, I will say, at least for what I do in my role and what I have done really for the past 7.5, 8 years, requires people to think outside of the box.
Okay.
And there aren't a lot of think outside of the box thinkers, or it just takes time. It really takes a long time to change mindsets. And so I wish we had maybe more diversity of thought and openness as an industry to different options and solutions that exist. And that might even be maybe outside of the industry, but the employers that we speak with and encouraging them to be open.
Sure. Sure. Now, you said that this industry doesn't have a lot of people that look like you and me. So let's dive into you for a second on that topic. Why
Yeah.
are there not as many female practitioners in the insurance industry?
Ooh, I don't know. I mean, I think it may go back to that campus education classes. Is it an interesting industry? Do you have, I mean, if we go back to do you have family in the industry?
Yeah,
If you don't have a mom or an aunt or a female figure that's in the industry that you can look towards, again, you're probably not going to gravitate towards this. What's the phrase? It's like you can't be what you can't see kind of
okay,
thing. And
sure,
so if you don't see someone that's successful in that role, it's really hard for you to envision yourself in that role. So
sure,
in an industry that is male dominated, it's probably pretty easy for somebody coming out of college that may be of the male persuasion, Caucasian, to say, well, if that person is the CEO of the company, I could be that.
sure,
But perhaps harder for someone of the female gender that doesn't see anyone in those positions. So I think in some ways it could keep people out if they don't think that there is a path for them. And we're probably not conscious enough within our own organizations to even look around the table to say, what voices are not represented here? Let's make
Sure.
sure that there's a voice and that every single perspective is heard.
Sure.
So I
Yeah.
think
I
it's
think
on us. I've just taken on a mentee relationship within my organization,
okay.
and it's really kind of fun, to be able to put my hat on and say, "Okay, what do I wish someone would have told me 10 years ago? And how can I help that next generation get to the level that I am more quickly?"
That
Yeah.
is it right there. And I want to talk to you about mentorship, but it's not just about mentorship. It's really about putting your arm around somebody and then pulling them up with you along that journey, right?
Yes.
That's really
Yeah,
what it takes to get somebody through a process faster than the process that you went through. And you can't be like a curmudgeon about it. You can't say, "Well, I wish somebody did blah 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 for me." It's you got to change it now for like the next generation.
that's right. That's
Yeah,
right. You can only do now, you gotta work with what you have today in front of you. And so I'm doing my best to pull her up, and even if it's guidance, like, what would you wear to a meeting, right? Like,
yeah,
sometimes we don't even think about that. How do you present yourself? Well, you should dress for the job that you want, not
that's
the
right.
job that you have.
So that's awesome that you're playing this role as mentor. But what about for you? Have you had mentors that have helped you in this industry?
I have, and I would say some of my mentors as well are even outside of the industry.
Hmm.
So as I was navigating career changes or, um, requesting additional responsibilities within organizations, I would reach out to one of my mentors who has since become almost more of a friend
Okay,
to get some outside perspective of, here's what's going on, what might you do in this situation? She was involved in the industry years ago and has since gone on to write a book, leave the industry, lead nonprofits. And I think having both a mentor externally and maybe some coaches internally within an organization can really help, and almost like your personal board of directors. Who are you reaching out to when you have some changes or you have questions? And she's been fabulous for me.
that's awesome. That's
What
great.
about you?
I do have mentors. I've had different mentors at different stages of my career. I'd say today I probably lean more on prior bosses, a prior chairman of the prior company that I worked for, and my former boss, because these are individuals that really made gigantic business impact. And I'd say that's the stage of my career that I'm at right now where I want to make big impact. Whereas, 10 to 15 years ago, I wanted to be a better actuary. And so at that time, I was really looking for mentorship from another actuary who was better or smarter or had seen more things, had more experience, and I needed to, you know, glean from them. So I would say at this stage of my career, I'm really looking for mentorship to take my career to the next level, really focused on leadership, really focused on business impact.
Yeah. Okay. I have a question for you.
Go for it.
So, big impact. What does that mean to you?
So I play in the stop loss industry, the reinsurance industry, and I'd say the stop loss marketplace is probably a $35 billion marketplace. And so to me, there's a handful of players that have a lot of premium, and then there's everybody else who's well down on that list. There's
Mm.
probably 100 stop loss carriers. If you add up all the direct writers, the regional health plans, the carriers that rate through MGUs, and are partnering with reinsurers, there's probably 100 players. And to me, like big impact is being in the top 10 and then being in the top 5 and then being the number 1, right? That's to me is
Mhm.
making a big impact in the industry.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Some
So I
good
got a long
good
ways to
goals
go.
there. I
I
was
got a
gonna
long
say,
ways
where
to go.
today on the list? Where are you today?
Yeah, I won't disclose the number that we are on that list, but I will say that that type of aspiration is what gives you like a long runway to stay hungry, right? Because if your runway is what we're gonna do this year,
Mm.
you may achieve it, you may not achieve it, but if you achieve it, then you need something else to strive for. And so in my career, I've always thought about having like long runway type of goals and then taking that and chiseling it down to what do you have to do in the next couple of years? What do you have to do this year? And then what do you have to do this week? Some of the people that are like closest to me know it's like, and I use some derogatory terms when I talk about this, but I won't do that today. But it's like, what are you accomplishing by this Thursday, right? There's big things we want to accomplish in the year and in the next couple of years, but what are you doing by this Thursday that's helping us achieve that? And if you don't know what you're doing this week, then you don't know how that feeds into what you're doing this month and this quarter and then finally this year, right? So it's really like taking your big goals and chiseling them down to what you can accomplish this week.
Have you read the book Atomic Habits?
I have not read that book. I used to be a big reader early in my career, and I've since fallen off because I moved on to podcasts and like filling my listening time. But I need to get back to reading. Do you think that's a book I should put on my list?
I think so, based on what you're saying right now. So I think I'm at chapter 4.
Okay.
But what the book describes is kind of what you're saying today is you can take these large goals, but if you don't bring them down to bite-sized pieces, you're
Yes.
not going to get there. And
Right.
so even if it's, I want to eat that cookie, but should I eat that cookie? And eating that cookie doesn't help me achieve my goal of whatever it is, losing 5 pounds.
Yeah.
And then so you're just slightly tweaking the way that you speak to yourself, but then also changing by 1%.
Mm,
That's really what the book speaks about is how small changes that you make and changing the voice that you speak to yourself in will help you achieve those larger goals. So
I like that.
I would get it on the Kindle, the hardback, or for you, the audiobook,
All
and
right.
let me know what you think of it.
I will do that. And I have filled my reading time with listening time. And obviously, like the world has changed here in the past like 5 to 15 years. And you mentioned these last 2 jobs you achieved were through networking on LinkedIn. Tell me what role does like social media and LinkedIn play for somebody who's trying to grow their careers?
I think it's huge. I do think it's huge. I think that I mean, let's talk about LinkedIn for a moment since that's really the professional site, and then we can
Yeah.
talk about the Facebooks and Instagrams. But for LinkedIn, you have to have a presence. And I'll give you an example. So we have a new group of folks that have joined the SIA Future Leaders Committee. And as I was looking and vetting candidates, one of the things that I did was actually went to every person's LinkedIn
Okay.
to see if they have a presence. Are they posting? Are they commenting? And if there was nothing about that individual on LinkedIn, right, wrong, or indifferent, they did not make the cut.
Sure.
And that's because, at least from the position of SIA, we have an annual conference, mentor forums. Heck, I'm doing a webinar on Wednesday. Promotion of that good news and sharing is a big part of the industry.
Sure.
And about what we're talking about today is you don't know what you don't know unless you're being invited to something or learning about it. So I think it's huge. From a career, personal perspective, it's important to be seen as a thought leader and engaging in the community. And so the more you can post on LinkedIn, photos of yourself at events, comments, but also weaving in personal, I think the better off that you are. Like I haven't done it in a while, and this is maybe a good reminder for me to do it.
Yeah,
But in the past, I've done some personal-ish professional posts on LinkedIn
sure,
that allowed people to see me from different aspects of who I am as an individual, not just, oh, Erin works at Imagine 360, but
sure.
also what goes on beyond the 8 to 5 or depends on the day
Yeah,
schedule. So I think it's critical to share, to like, to comment, to engage, um, and to make connections with people.
sure. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's almost like the new water cooler, right? Because so many people are in diversified office settings. Many people are remote.
Yeah.
And so you need like a new digital water cooler where you're creating spaces for people to engage with each other. And it goes beyond your own company, it goes to other companies, to other practitioners, and even beyond your own industry. So I couldn't agree with you more. I want to shift the focus to our industry that we work in, which is the self insured and stop loss and reinsurance space. For me, I know you play in the self insured space as well. What do you see as like the biggest risk facing our industry?
Well, I think we have a few. I mean, it wouldn't be a call without talking about cell and gene therapy and
Yeah,
GLP-1s and how do we figure all those pieces out, whether it's a solution that's coming from the government, whether it's a solution that is homegrown amongst all of us. Um, but I think that there are some ethical decisions as well that
yeah,
employers will probably need to make and think about. There's so much swirling around right now, whether it's the J&J lawsuit in Wisconsin or the cell and gene drugs, that it feels like things are coming to a head and we have to almost sometimes we're a bit reactionary. I don't know if you feel
yeah,
that way in the industry.
yeah, totally.
You do? Okay.
Yeah,
It feels like we need to be thinking, I don't know if it's out of SIA or just, folks like us coming together may have been saying like, what's next? What we know what has come out. We may not have predicted some of it. Now we're on our heels trying to think about how do we pay for it? How do we plan for it? How do we advise and consult on it?
yeah,
What's next? And I think that's one of the challenges. I mean, you see it probably more closely than I do in terms of from a financial perspective. What are your thoughts?
I think everything you mentioned at the end of the day gets wrapped up into high costs, right? And when it's a high cost that you see on your balance sheet, now all of a sudden it's like an oh shit moment, right? And now it's like I got to do something about this. But the reality is like we could see these things coming from a mile away, a couple of years in advance. And I think that's the case for cell and gene, that there's been a lot of chatter on that topic for about 7 to 8 years now. And the momentum is just now coming in the space where now we have 11 FDA approved gene therapies at an average cost of, $2 to $3 million. But when these things were getting spoken of 7, 8 years ago and the costs weren't there, I think people at the time were focused on the other stuff that was hitting them at that moment. And so it's almost hard for people to think about the future when they're dealing with like the present situation. Um, we were talking a lot about cell gene therapy in 2019 and 2020. And then in 2020, COVID hit. And so nobody wanted to talk about cell and gene because they were really focused on how am I going to keep my people safe? What's my return to work policies going to be? How do I have an atmosphere that has people still engage with us because now we're 100% remote? And so I think those issues were most top of mind to employers. And it's not to say that this topic wasn't seen. It was seen, but there's always something more important right now. And I
Yes.
think the right now issue is GLP-1s, right? There was just another Ozempic just got approved, not Ozempic, Wegovy just got approved for another indication, which means it's going to be used more than it was being used before. And I think employers are going to really have to wrap their head around how to solve for that because that's not a stop loss claim. Those are at most, $10,000 to $15,000 in the year of total spend, which is a crap ton of money if a lot of people are using it.
Yeah.
And so that's not really an issue that plan sponsors are going to say, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to let the stop loss carrier worry about that. And cell and gene kind of falls under that category. But I think employers got to think long and hard about how they're going to solve the GLP-1 problem.
Yeah, and I think and you're bringing something else up too is I think sometimes as an industry we're so isolated in the thought process
Yeah.
because the GLP-1s do have benefits for multiple situations, right? I mean, it's not
Yes.
just a diabetes drug. And so sometimes I think we are closed-minded in that if something doesn't fit in this little box,
Yeah.
we're not going to cover it, pay for it, think about covering it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the challenges I see in the industry too is who's making those decisions, right? And like how are those decisions getting made? Are we thinking about the big picture when this impacts multiple individuals and can for a benefit?
I know what you mean. I'll kind of translate it to MySpace gene therapy, and there's these $3 million treatments for hemophilia, and that's really expensive. And the question is, like, why would we cover that? Well, the reason why you may cover it is because the individual who suffers from that condition is currently spending like 600,000 to $1 million per year.
Right.
And God forbid that person has some form of accident, they could have a bleed that could be extremely expensive, right? And so if you look at the annuity value of what you're spending for this person's healthcare versus a one-time treatment that could make that condition go away, financially, it could make more sense to do that. Now, the problem is healthcare, for better or worse, is a one-year deal. And so these are almost like who's the winner of the unlucky lotto, right? Because nobody wants to get stuck with that one-time $3 million expense if the 600,000 to $1 million treatment is working for somebody, and maybe this year it's my problem, and next year it'll be somebody else's problem. Let's move into like some rapid fire questions. All right, so I'm gonna ask you these questions, and you give me some fast answers. Ready?
I'll do my best. Okay.
All right. So tell me three words that best describe a career in the self-funded industry.
Ever changing, challenging, and rewarding.
Okay. Uh, Putting your professional social media and LinkedIn to the side, where are we most likely to find Erin Duffy? Is it on TikTok, Snapchat, or Instagram?
It's definitely Instagram. I have not gotten on the TikTok train and I'm staying off.
You're staying off. Okay, that's
I'll do the
totally fine.
Snapchat once in a while, but it's Instagram and even Facebook. I know old school came out when I was in college. I'm still on it.
All right. What's one of your passions outside of work?
Can I name more than one?
Sure, go for it.
Okay. Golf, Pilates, and travel.
All right. Um, if you could do it all over again and not pursue a career in the insurance industry, what career path would you have followed?
I have absolutely no idea.
That's fine. No, nothing wrong with that. What about for somebody new who's getting started in our industry? Would you advise them to start on the broker consultant path? Would you advise them to start on like the traditional carrier slash TPA path? Or would you advise them to start in the, let's call it the next gen solutions, RBP, captive, point solutions, things like that?
Hmm. I might say to join a TPA. And
Okay.
the reason that I say that is it would allow someone to get a flavor of multiple aspects of the health plan, all self funded, but still touching the carrier world, touching potentially that reference based pricing world, learning about PBMs, learning about stop loss. I think you could, any path is a great one to start,
Yeah.
but that one might lead you down some windier, more unique roads than if you
Okay.
started in some other places.
Got it. All right. Awesome. Now I'm going to ask you a very controversial question. Okay.
Ooh,
What is your take on new people coming into our industry and their ability to work from home versus working in an in-office setting?
I think it's hard. I think it has to be hard. Um, in some environments, there is no option. You have to work from home
Yeah.
because you may not have a physical office. And for folks that fall into that category, my guidance would be have as many calls with people in different departments as you can.
Mm,
Get your name out there, learn who leads departments, learn who your go to people can be if you have a question or need a favor.
yeah.
I don't envy folks in that position because it's hard coming into an industry that you don't know much about, that you're trying to make a name for yourself in and make connections.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I've done with my mentee is we've she's reached out to different department leaders to have an hour call to get to know what they do, to ask them questions. Otherwise, I think it's really hard. And if you do have a physical office, I would say find a way to get there,
Yeah.
to meet a few people in person, because this is great. And so much has come out of COVID that is positive, but it also can be a potential setback if we don't have a coffee together, maybe, and we don't get to know each
Sure.
other, right? Are you going to say, I'd like to put Erin up for a promotion? Maybe not if I haven't demonstrated all of my capabilities and we haven't made a personal connection.
Sure.
So I would say for those folks, it's hard. And depending on what your goals are and your career path, raise your hand, ask for more responsibility, and get to know people. Because that's really what the industry is about too. It's networking.
That is right, and that is good advice. I was going to ask you one last question, and maybe these kind of weave together. But what's just one piece of advice you can give to somebody getting started in our industry today?
For I would say one piece of advice for people getting started in the industry is reach out to tangential employers or organizations rather to understand what they do. That's something that I know I didn't really do early enough in my career. I sat in the broker consultant seat, but didn't know about this world and how vast it is
Yeah.
for several years. And so my advice would be start to open your own minds to know what else is out there because you will set yourself apart from others within your organization if you can speak to a little bit of stop loss, a little bit of PBM,
Sure.
a little bit of TPA rather than staying in your silo.
That's really good advice, Erin. And we'll close it up there for today. So thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of Fervent Final.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. Looking forward to the next one.
All right, we'll let you get out of here and we'll see you soon. Thanks, Erin.
Have a great week, everyone.